I'm Sherdina Williams. This is Phillip, and Phillip is 14 years old. And this is my daughter Sarah, and Sarah is 12. And it's pretty much, and this is the children's godmother and one of my very, very best friends and wonderful support systems, Helena Harrison. And pretty much this is our family. Yes. Well, we not really. We do have two adult children too, but they don't live here. Forgot about them. But they don't live here. One is in South Korea teaching English, and the other one is Michael working in Columbus. When we're anywhere, I always tell the kids coming up, we're a second look family. You know, you see our family eating dinner and you stop and you look again. We always, so that alone makes us special. Look at us. And you don't even see the 6 feet boys that we have too. So we have always been double takers, And the fact that you couldn't get any more diverse than we are, so. I always knew, Phillip was adopted, but I knew Phillip was deaf-blind, but I didn't know exactly what that meant. So it wasn't a surprise to me. With Phillip, the deaf-blindness was just on top of an additional maybe 7 other diagnoses. So I did not understand, nor did I anticipate what unique challenges the deaf blindness presented and how it impacted everything else, even with the other diagnoses. So I can't say that I was surprised, but totally ignorant as to what it meant and the implications. And we try to, because Phillip requires so much time, make sure that Sarah has extra opportunities. Her friends can come over, and I keep an open door policy with her friends, and she gets to go spend time with her godmother so that she's not always just here, because sometimes when we don't have the nurses, she can be confined because Phillip has hip issues and pain issues, so that she's not always confined herself, so that she's between her friends and her godmother, she can have opportunities to be 12. This is Mr. Bubbles. This is Sarah's pet. This was one of my compromises to Sarah. When we got Phil, Mike was already in high school getting ready to go to college. So he was really only with Phil a couple of years in the house before he left for college, and Steve was in high school. So the boys have really been, Steve was in junior high, so they have been really phenomenal, and they both took different interests with Phil. Mike was always so focused on Phillip had to be perfect. Everything had to match. Phillip had to be perfect. That was like, I don't know why Mike was so into that. I couldn't put his hat on his head crooked, or, Mike, no, he has to look like we love him and respect and dignity, Whereas Stephen thing was just music therapy. So Stephen really started Phillip with the music therapy. And that's how we discovered too that there was something with the hearing. We weren't exactly sure what, because we learned real quick that Phillip had preferences of music. Stephen only did a lot of the classical music therapy with Phillip because he had read in school that it would increase intelligence. So that's all he wanted Phillip to listen to, was to do classical. When Mike came home from school, Mike would switch the radio station to rap and all. Well, we discovered Phillip loved that. Phillip would bob his head and tap to the music. And then when Stephen came in after Mike about 30 minutes, he would automatically switch the radio back to the classical. Well, Phillip would start crying. So, and I'm like, what happens every day, Stephen? Why does he cry every time you come in the house? And we didn't realize it. And Michael was saying, because he's forcing him to listen to that classical music, And that's when I said, okay, it's time for a hearing test. Let's figure out what's going on here. So the boys, they're the ones that helped me with all of that. Yeah. The deaf blindness itself was probably, once I really understood it, my biggest obstacle, because now Phillip was turning 3, and I realized, and I work full time. Well, now I don't have a 3-year-old that can go to a traditional child care center. I realized that my biggest obstacle at this point was that, how do I teach Phillip? You can't always tell, but Phillip is so teachable. And how do I teach him? And not only how do we teach Phillip, but how now do we make it so that anyone else can see the potential in him that we saw? So, now you take away the sight, you take away the hearing. What mode now do we use for learning? How do we get that across? I was clueless too. So that's where I was seeking information. And everyone was, and it didn't help, with the shunt, with the seizures, with the holoprosencephaly, global developmental delays. So you add all of that, and the fact that the kid was sick more than he was well, you add that all with the deaf blindness, and you start calling people, and they're like, I don't think so, I did get services. What I started doing was I started taking Phillip with me to these places, so that it's easy to tell me no over the phone, but then when you see me with this cute little kid who needs help, so I would pack him up with all of this stuff, and everybody was willing. Nobody knew what to do with Phillip. So it was really, made it a complicated issue, very complex. We knew that whatever potential he had, if we didn't get help with someone who could teach us how to even work with Phillip, that it wasn't going to be successful for him or for us. My emergency was everybody else's job. So it wasn't top of anybody's priority list but mine, so. And we were able to get, Phillip was turning 3, so we needed to get him in preschool for disabilities, so Phillip could get an IEP. So actually, the first one was he had already had an IFSP, which I didn't know that he had already had one. So we started that process, and because Phillip wasn't adopted at the time, I learned the social worker that I couldn't make any decisions. So the social worker, who was 12, she came. I'm acting silly, but almost, So she came, and I had all of these ideals. I had done some research by then. I knew kind of a little what I wanted it to look like for him. Everyone was terribly nice at the table. When I started asking for certain things to address the deaf blindness, well, first of all, the only thing that they really knew of was multiple handicap, which in itself was great, but there was no VI services, and there was nothing to help with the hearing impairment. So I'm like, okay, but he's totally blind. The assessment tools and that they were using, he was going to show up as even being lower than what he was, because he can't see it. He couldn't do any of those things. He didn't have any of those skills. So I saw initially that there are no tools to even assess him. So they don't even get to see how intelligent he really is based on the things that we know, So that was a big issue. And so, needless to say, the IEP was the meeting. It was terrible. I left that meeting in tears. Even thinking about it, I get really kind of like emotional. But I also left that meeting empowered because I realized that I needed to do more. There was too much information that I did not have. And I decided after that IEP meeting, I'm not going to say no one will ever be in tears again, but it wasn't going to be me. I learned that it is crucial that everybody is a member of the team. I don't do the fight anymore. The first couple of years, the battle was on. I would go in with the boxing gloves, but I've learned that once everybody's a part of the team, that's not necessary. Philip's pretty involved. So I get that. It's making a lot of the services for transition very disheartening because so many of the transitional issues are geared towards rehab or vocational, and I don't know if that will happen. We've been doing things like dropping things in buckets so that if there's an opportunity for him to attend a workshop, he can, maybe scan and pick something up and put it in a bag. So we've been working on that. But my hopes and dreams for Phillip is that he's just will be in an environment whereas he will be protected, loved, and accepted, whatever that looks like. I had always had that number for deaf blind, the Ohio Center Deaf Blind Project, but I thought it was a place. And I thought that, I knew Phillip had been from the Columbus area and it was a Columbus address. So I just thought it was a place. However, that day, that moment, if I needed to drive to that place with Phillip, I was willing to, so if this is the only thing that said deaf blind that anybody had given me, so I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to get that. I called the advocate. I called an advocate for Phillip for MRDD. I needed an advocate. I needed someone who would help me advocate for him. And I called the Deaf Blind Project. Well, when I called the Deaf Blind Project, at that time it was another worker that was there. And I told her who I was and the name of the kid that I had, and that I have received this information. It was in a package, but I wasn't sure. And that was it. That was the opening. They knew Phil. He was already on the census, but they had lost track with him coming to the Cuyahoga County, moving away so far. I think within that next week, we were on the phone constantly. They sent me out a worker to the house, Deirdre Wilson. She came and she assessed and she helped me. She thought I was a little farther along than I thought I was, because the toys and things, that was the easy part, because we would get things to stimulate him, and we knew he liked music, he liked vibration. We weren't really sure at that point how much he could hear, what he couldn't hear. We weren't even sure how blind he was, so we knew nothing really. Then once I got with the Deaf Blind Project, it was like God sent for us. The education was there, the resources were there, help with the IEPs were there, just even people in the area that Janet Stone, we were able to, she was doing a lot of work at that time with preschools with visual impairment, so we went to a lot of her musical sessions and made toys and learned about the texture and just started really opening up a lot of doors with how to educate Phillip. With us at first, we were a bubble with Phillip. I never met another kid like Phillip. It's like, kids like Phillip, But when we got exposure to the Deafblind Project, we also got exposure to the families. And they have just been wonderful. They have been my best teachers. We go to the conferences and somebody finds out about this, and we have this, like, everybody shares things from medical to educational, just what's available, what's out there, passing equipment around to each other. It's been awesome. The networking has just been phenomenal. The thing that has been the most treasured for me has been the other families. Just everybody's a gem, and they just help me to realize that I can do it. When I see all the families and everybody's doing it, it's different, but we can do it. And the families have just been phenomenal, and I can't speak enough about the resources. There's so much hope out there. There's so much out there. There's the community for the deafblind is limited, but it's accessible. You just don't give up. Seek the resources. It's all about the resources, the resources, the resources. Very important, do not allow your child to be classified as multiple handicap. Make sure your child is classified as deafblind so that they will be able to get the resources that they need to help them to achieve.